Massive demonstrations are underway once again in Midtown tonight.
Times Square lit up, and tonight, Adam, it is lit up with protesters who are now taking over the streets as they demand justice.
The only thing with the town here we see is the Times Square Alliance cleaners. That's it. Governor Andrew Cuomo extending the so-called New York pause for at least another month.
You can see folks up here have been reciting poetry. The story from here in Times Square is this is an absolutely peaceful protest.
Skybox HD was over this scene as thousands of people dropped to their knees for a moment of silence in honor of George Floyd.
Yoga is a means of aligning our physical, mental, and spiritual aspects to balance. We yogis have grown accustomed to navigating, as proved by the thousands of people that attend Summer Solstice yoga in Times Square and the millions of yoga practitioners across the world. The navigational guides we utilized are known as the gunas in Sanskrit. These are the three chords or principles, tamas, rajas, sattva, that bind us to nature and direct us towards the truth of ourselves, according to yoga philosophy. If we search our own lives, we can see evidence of areas where we are lethargic, slow to move, dull even, tamasic. We can also see areas of our lives where we seem to be moving past old habits, but in reality just spinning our wheels, rajasic. There are occasions where we hit the right balance, sattva. We all do it. But yoga highlights the personal, social, and universal journey, perhaps as one of many factors in our recognition that Black lives matter. We as a nation are awakening out of our own racial torpor, rising out of our dullness to racial injustice. We've been moved to action by witnessing a Black man forcibly held down by a policeman unwilling to allow him to breathe. The momentum to this incident was too great to lay motionless. We have been compelled to move. The movement, in the form of protest, has been directed towards the intention to create lasting change, to navigate to balance. We have used the ancient science of yoga to see ourselves with clarity and to navigate towards truth, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. Welcome to Summer Solstice Yoga in Times Square. As you can see, there's not too many people around. We're still pretty much under quarantine. But you're here nevertheless, and we're practicing yoga from wherever you are. And I'm grateful for your presence. This is our 18th year, and a lot has changed. We've been under quarantine through COVID-19. We've experienced ourselves being isolated and using those times to just sort of reflect on what's important. We've seen an uprising and living through the protests and the solidarity to Black Lives Matter. So much has changed, these huge waves of change. But through it all, there is, for me anyway, the practice of yoga that helps to frame it all, that helps us to frame it towards and into the direction of peace. Come onto your mats and we'll start our practice. The beautiful sunrise, the sun, as you know, shines its light down onto earth indiscriminately, helps us to see, providing vitality and sustaining life here on earth. We're in Tadasana, mountain pose, steady and stable, connected to the ground. Feel as though your body is the continuation of the earth itself into this expression, Tadasana, mountain pose. Your toes are free. You feel weight even in the pads of your feet and in your heels. You can unlock your knees. You feel your body continuing to rise up out of the ground majestically, connecting Earth's energy you feel your own vitality. Can you feel your breath? Breath is a vital part of the practice. Take a slow breath in. And a slow breath out as your hands come down along the sides of your body into your heart. Take a slow draw breath in as your hands reach down and out and up. Take a slow draw breath out or release a breath out that brings your hands to your heart. Let's do 3 more. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. Now let's pause here and reflect. Let's dedicate this pause, this moment, to George Floyd. And to all the lives that we've lost through injustice. Breathing in, your hands flow down and out and up. Breathing out, float over your legs, forward fold, Uttanasana. Breathe in, come into chair pose as your legs touch one another and as you sit deep. On the out breath, sit deeper as your hands reach diagonally from your sitting bones. Breathing in. And on the out breath, fold over your legs, Uttanasana, letting your belly recede toward your spine. On the in-breath, Urdhva Hastasana, take the breath into the back of your lungs. As you're breathing out, fold over your legs. On the in-breath, sweep your arms out to the side and hinge to standing so that your palms touch above you. And as you're breathing out, draw your hands down the middle line to your heart. Breathe in, your hands float down and out and up. Breathe out, float forward over your legs. Breathe in, take chair pose, Utkatasana. Breathe out, sit deeper into your chair, feeling your heels connect to the ground and your toes free. Breathe in, honing the architecture of the pose and your commitment to it. Breathing out, belly to thigh bones as you lengthen your legs, folding to Uttanasana. On the in-breath, Urdhva Hastasana, halfway up, but let the breath flow into the back side of the lungs. On the out breath, folding over your legs, the belly recedes toward your spine, completely empty. On the in breath, sweep your arms to the side and hinge to stand, your palms touching above you. And when you're breathing out, draw your hands to your heart. Breathe in. We'll repeat this vinyasa 2 more times. Your hands flowing down and out and up. Breathe out. Float over your legs. Breathe in, halfway forward and up with your torso. Breathe out, floating over your legs. Breathe in, Utkatasana. Breathe out, sit deeper into your chair. Breathe in, organizing. Breathe out, float forward over your legs, lengthening. Breathe in, torso forward. And breathe out, float over your legs. Sweep to stand. And breathe out to your heart. We'll play this. I'll chatter less about the architecture of the posture. I want you to think more about your own vitality and life force. In. Out. How your own life matters. In. Out. In. Out. In. Out. In to stand. Heart. How Black lives matter. Pause here for a moment. You feel your own vitality. You can feel and see around me the city starting to wake up a little bit. The juice is starting to flow. The next out breath, bend your knees and bring your fingertips down into the line of your feet, so that you feel the legs held to each other. Your sitting bones reaching into the space behind your spine can lengthen out of that security. Pressure your left hand into the left thigh bone and send your right hand reaching forward. Keep space between your shoulders and your jaw. Lengthen as you breathe in. And as you're breathing out, use those components to rotate to your left, eventually fitting your right elbow to the outside of your left knee. Make sure that both of your knees remain in the same plane with each other, the spine lengthening. Perhaps you may be able to bring your palms to touch and your elbows poke away from one another. Revolving chair pose. Feel your breath. Connect with your breathing. The vital force. You may be strong enough to reach deeper into the posture as your right hand reaches down to the outside of your left foot and your left hand can sweep up. A complicated situation. Nevertheless, you can breathe. And if you can't breathe, then adjust the situation. Top hand comes down, lengthen your legs, fold, forward folding. We'll hold this forward fold
for about 4 breaths. This is a chance to just feel your own vitality, to recognize what has come before, leading you to this very moment. You may be able to reach deeper into the posture by incrementally moving your fingers farther and farther back towards the back edge of your mat. On the in-breath, Urdhva Hastasana. On the out-breath, folding over your legs. On the in-breath, sweep to stand, your hands touching above. And as you're breathing out, draw your hands to your heart. Your next out-breath, bend your knees and bring your fingertips down into the line of your toes. The sitting bones are reaching into the space behind. The spine lengthens forward. Right hand pressures onto the right thigh bone. Your left hand reaches forward, checking the support system, legs, feet, pelvis, lengthening through the spine. Use those components to rotate to your right, eventually fitting your left elbow to the outside of your right knee. Your palms can come to touch one another. Can you breathe? Can you breathe? You may be able to play deeper into the pose by sending your left hand down and the right hand up. Top hand comes down, folding over your legs, Uttanasana. 2 breaths. On the in-breath, send your torso forward. On the out-breath, fold over your legs. On the in-breath, sweep to stand, your palms touching above. And as you're breathing out, bring your hands to your heart. Feel your vitality. Breathe in, everybody. Your hands flow down and out and up. Breathe out, float forward over your legs. Breathe in, thread your heart forward. On the out-breath, step down onto hands and knees. And fold your forearms and elbows down onto the mat so that they arrive parallel to one another. Step your feet back into the space behind. Half plank pose, this variation of Chaturanga Dandasana. Feel the rib cage reach toward your hip bones, and the hip bones draw towards the rib cage. Send your head forward. Feel your power, your vitality, your presence here on earth. Can you breathe? Can you breathe? Bring your knees down onto the mat. Come onto hands and knees so that your hands are right underneath your shoulders. Your knees are right underneath your hip bones. As you're breathing in, initiated by the lift of the tailbone, allowing the belly to relax towards the ground. Lift up your heart. As you're breathing out, flip the tops of your feet onto the ground. Feel the tailbone reach to the ground, allowing your spine to round against the sky. Your head hangs. On the in-breath, your toes are curled under. The tailbone initiates the motion upward, causing the belly to sag. Breathe in through the front of your lungs as you lift your eyes. As you're breathing out, flip the tops of your feet onto the ground. The tailbone points downward, the spine rounds. You can see your navel. 2 rounds. Inhaling, Vittalasana, up cat I call it. Breathing out, Mariasana, down cat I call it. Breathe in, lubricating the pelvic girdle, the shoulder girdle, and all the vertebra. Breathing out, rounding. Breathe in, arch. And as you're breathing out, press to downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana, where you organize your toes to point directly forward and your heels to reach towards the ground. And your feet are just about as far apart as your sitting bones are wide. And the pelvis reaches back and up into the back space behind. And the ribs relate to the hip bones. And the upper outer arms can roll down and under. You feel your hands supportive as they reach forward and down into the mat. And your ears right in line with your biceps. The architecture of the posture. Let it speak to you. What is the purpose of this? Why are we doing this in this moment? Look to your hands as you're breathing in, and as you're breathing out, step your left foot forward and turn your right foot flush against the ground. Reaching forward with your hands far from the back foot, climb upward into Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1. Make sure that your left shin bone is perpendicular to the ground, the back leg is engaged. It feels like the sides of the body are growing up out of the ground. Your hands float down. Step to plank pose, breathing in. This variation of plank pose, the creases of your wrists are parallel to the front edge of your mat. You can roll the hollows of the elbows forward, feel the ribs reach towards the hip bones, keep space between your shoulder blades, your feet pressed against the space behind, your head extends. Can you breathe? Take downward dog, your next out breath. 3 breaths. As a black man, I have come to use the practice of yoga as a lens through which I view the world. Look to your hands as you're breathing in. And as you're breathing out, send your right foot forward and flip your left foot flush onto the ground. Feel the importance of that back foot for support as your hands and arms lengthen forward. Climb up to Vira 1. The right shin bone perpendicular to the ground. The left leg fully engaged. The sides of the body lengthening. There have been many times in my life that I've had to be the warrior Your hands float down. Step into plank pose, breathing in. On the out breath, feel the rib cage and hip bones energize to each other. Hug your upper body with your upper arms. Lower a few inches towards the ground. Chaturanga Dandasana. This first upward or back bend, leave your knees against the mat. Come to high cobra, keeping space between your shoulders and your jaw. Let your heart bloom. And as you're breathing out, return to downward dog. We'll hold for 4 breaths. Look to your hands as you're breathing in. And as you're breathing out, step your left foot forward again. Turn your right foot flush onto the ground. Return to warrior 1 as you're breathing in, feeling your own power. As you're breathing out, send your torso forward. Slide your torso or your pelvis forward over the left foot. As we arrive in Virabhadrasana 3, Warrior 3. The spine arrives parallel to the ground. The back leg arrives parallel to the ground. It's hard to be a warrior all the time. Sometimes you find yourself just standing on one leg, but you reach deep within yourself for inner support. Step into plank pose, breathing in. And as you're breathing out, Chaturanga Dandasana. On the in-breath, upward dog, where you feel the weight of your body on your feet and your hands, and you're looking upward. And as you're breathing out, press to downward dog. 2 breaths. Look to your hands as you're breathing in. And as you're breathing out, step your right foot forward and turn your left foot flush against the ground. Take warrior 1 as you're breathing in. And as you're breathing out, send your torso forward. The pelvis floats over the right foot. Your hands come to prayer. Yes, there's always prayer. As the left toes turn down, the low ribs and hip bones draw towards one another. You feel your power. You feel compelled to be the warrior in several occasions. Step to plank pose, breathing in. Take chaturanga, breathing out. Take up dog. Take downward dog, breathing out. We'll hold for 4 breaths. Yoga is an ancient template. With the sole purpose of bringing into alignment mind, body, spirit. Come onto hands and knees. Take up cat as you're breathing in. Take down cat, breathing out. Take up cat, breathing in. And as you're breathing out, will you separate your knees so that they're just about as wide as your mat? Bring your big toes to touch. Sit back into the space between both of your heels so that your fingers reach way forward. The pelvis draws back into the space behind. Lay your head right onto the ground. extended child's pose. We'll hold for 4 breaths. Come onto hands and knees. If you can, hop your feet forward so that they're just about as wide as your pelvis. And your pelvis rests just into the space between both of your shin bones, and your elbows fit nicely into your inner knees. And they can encourage the knees to open away from one another. Remember that you're tracking the center of your knees right in line with your second toes, as not to aggravate the knee joints. The spine grows. I miss seeing your faces and hearing your breaths. The thousands of people that would come to Times Square to practice yoga over 18 years. But I'm glad you're here practicing with me today, even under these circumstances. Let your hands come down onto the mat. Step into plank pose, breathing in. And as you're breathing out, take chaturanga, upward dog on the in. As you're breathing out, play downward dog. Take your left toes back and up into the space behind. It's a nice chance to lengthen the whole left side of your body. You feel those back toes, those left toes seeking information back there. What's going on back in that space? Look to your hands as you're breathing in. And as you're breathing out, step your left foot forward and turn your right foot flush onto the ground. Your left hand pressures onto the left thigh bone. Your right fingers are reaching way forward. Press into that left thigh bone, coming up to Virabhadrasana 2, where your left hand reaches into that back space and the right palm floats parallel to the ground. Look over your left hand. The left shin bone perpendicular to the ground, the right hip and left hip free, the ribs related to the space, towards the hips. Stretch your left leg long. Let your right hand reach onto the right hip. Reach way forward with your left hand. Bring your left hand down to the inside or outside of the left shin bone. Your right hand can encourage the rib cage to lay flush against the ground, your torso. The right hand reaches up, Trikonasana. Feel your breath. Bring both hands down onto the ground. Step your back foot forward, maybe about 4 inches or so. Take your left hand and draw the left hip crease back into the space behind. Readjust your right hand so that it's right underneath the right shoulder. Lengthen the spine forward and long. Use those components to begin a revolve to the left. Steadiness, ease as your left hand reaches upward. Step into plank pose, breathing in. Chaturanga, breathing out. Up dog, breathing in. Full breath in, open your heart. Downward dog, breathing out. Celebrate here. Celebrate. Take your right toes back and up into the space behind. Let them feel around back there. Explorers. Look to your hands as you're breathing in, and as you're breathing out, send your right foot forward and your left foot goes flush against the ground. Right hand on the right knee or shin bone or thigh bone, your left hand reaching way forward and then up and then back into the space behind. Boom. Feel your breath. Steady yourself. Commit to your purpose for practicing yoga. Why are you here? Lengthen your right leg long. Send your left hand onto the left hip. Draw the left hip back with it. Send your right hand forward. Your right hand can touch down to the inside of the right shin bone. Your left hand brushes the ribs more towards the spine. The spine lays flush against the space behind you. Your left hand can reach right up. A nice conduit between the earth and the heavens. Sometimes you feel yourself a little rocky, a little shaky, a little nervous, a little anxious, a little angry. It's part of the human experience. Bring your hands down onto the ground. Step your back foot forward about an inch or two, 3 inches or so. Your right hand draws the right hip back. Readjust your left hand. Right underneath the left shoulder. Drawing the right hip back into the space behind. Lengthen the spine and use those coordinates to lengthen and to rotate to your right. I didn't offer it on the first side, but maybe your left hand comes to the outside of the right foot as you lengthen and then recommit. Rest in power. Beautiful. George Floyd. Step into plank pose, breathing in. Take chaturanga, breathing out. Up dog on the in-breath. Take downward dog as you're breathing out. 2 breaths. Come on to hands and knees. This time, everybody, gather your legs to touch one another. Lay the tops of your feet onto the mat. Sit back onto your heels. Your hands are just by the sides of your feet as you bring your hairline down onto your mat. It's child's pose. We'll hold for about 4 or 5 breaths. It's important in this pose, especially now as we are still in the experiencing the pandemic, COVID-19. Now that the backside of your lungs are exposed, just use this posture to breathe into the back lung space. Take a slow draw of breath into the back lung space, feeling the spongy expansion of your breath, of the lungs as they expand. And as you're breathing out, you feel how the lungs deflate, the ribs retract, and your belly floats toward your spine. Take a slow draw of breath into the back lung space, feeling the spongy quality of your lungs as you expand into them with your in-breath. And as you're breathing out, you feel the lungs deflate, the ribs retract, and the belly floats back. Take one more. Come onto hands and knees again, separating your knees so that they're about hip width apart. As you're breathing out, take down cat, rounding the spine. As you're breathing in, arching the spine. And on the out breath, press to downward dog. Look to your hands as you breathe in. And as you're breathing out, step forward so that you can fit your knees into the upper armpits, pressuring the one knee into the one upper arm or armpit, and then the other knee reaches into the depth of the armpit. Make sure that your shoulders are from your jaw, the arm bones and leg bones active towards the center line of the body, big toes touching, crow pose. Step down, step into plank pose, breathing in. And as you're breathing out, chaturanga, up dog, downward dog. 2 breaths. Come onto hands and knees, preparing for camel pose as you come upright on your 2 knees. Your toes are curled under behind. Your knees are reaching right into the front edge of your mat. You can sweep your hands back onto your buttocks so that your fingers are up or down. Calling the hip bones up away from your knees provides the perfect foundation for the posture. Sensing then that your spine begins to grow up out of the pelvic bowl. You feel the back body energized to the front body, and the front body energized to the back body. As your heart rises slightly higher than the horizon line over time, incrementally, and your head reaches into the space behind. Stay here if you need. Those of you that can reach deeper, maybe your fingers wrap around your heels, and the back body reaches into the front body, and the front body stretches over the back body. You might be able to stretch the tops of your feet onto the mat. Lengthen your arms. Ease your sitting bones back onto your heels. Bring your hands forward. For rabbit pose, the counter pose, bring the very top of your head onto the mat. Rather than your forehead, bring the top of your head down onto the ground for this inversion. Your hands can come just to the outside of your knees. The spine rounds against the sky. The arm bones and leg bones are parallel to one another. You may be able to reach to your heels again with your hands or fingers. The tops of your feet can come down onto the ground, and shin bones reach into the mat as you draw the navel toward your spine and the spine reaches towards the sky. Make sure that you're at the top of your head rather than your forehead as not to injure your neck. Shashankasana. Releasing the pose. Those of you that are strong here, if your hands are by your knees and your arms are parallel to one another, you may lift your knees from the ground and place your knees right on top of your elbows, one at a time. Make sure that the arm bones and leg bones arrive parallel to each other. Tripod headstand. Toes touch down. Hands and knees. Sit back. Child's pose. We'll hold for 4 breaths. A chance to feel the energy, the life force, the vital force moving through your body and through your mind. Take up cat as you're breathing in. Take downward dog as you're breathing out. Look to your hands as you're breathing in. And as you're breathing out, stroll forward, feet touching, fold over your legs. On the in-breath, sweep to stand. When you're breathing out, draw your hands to your heart. Standing firmly on both feet, actually. Your hands can come onto your pelvis. Shift your body's weight onto your left foot to bring your right knee into your right hand. The low ribs relate to the hip bones, just to find and support through the core. Pivot the right knee to the right. Fit that right foot high up into the left thigh bone. Your hands to prayer. Tree pose. Open your arms out to the side. Bring them up to touch if you're able to. Stay here if you'd like. Those of you that want to challenge, your left hand comes to your left hip. The right middle finger and thumb, index finger come to the right big toe. Send the right heel to the right. Lengthen your left arm. If you dare, look over your left arm. Return to tree or variations. Return to Tadasana. Secure, stable. Breathe in, your hands float down and out and up. Breathe out, float over your legs. Breathe in, heart flows forward. Breathe out, float over your legs. Breathe in, sweep to stand. And as you're breathing out, draw your hands to your heart. Celebrate this moment. With your hands on your pelvis, shift your weight onto your right foot. Steady. Your left knee comes into your left hand. You can stay here if you're needing to, it's fine. Strengthening the right ankle, the right knee joint, right hip joint. Otherwise, open that left knee to the left. Fit the sole of that left foot up into the right thigh bone or even onto the shin bone, but avoid placing that foot on the knee joint. Your hands come to prayer. Tree pose. Yeah, trees can grow in Times Square. Maybe your hands come out and up, your palms touching. Stay here if you'd like. Those of you that want to travel on, your middle finger, forefinger, and thumb of your left hand comes around the left big toe, sending the left heel to the left. And your right hand. Return to tree. Enter Tadasana. Breathing in, your hands flow down and out and up. That noise that you heard in the background, fold over your legs as you're breathing out. Counter metaphor. On the in-breath, send your heart forward for the noise that goes on sometimes in my own brain. As you're breathing out, step into plank pose. Breathe in here. Take chaturanga. Up dog. Downward dog. 2 breaths. Come onto hands and knees and sit upright on your heels for a moment. Vajrasana. It's a nice stretch of the quadriceps. A nice stretch of the muscles that feed into the shin bones and then at the tops of your feet. Flip your feet forward and come to sitting. Dandasana, where your heels reach forward towards the front edge of your mat and your sitting bones are drawn back towards the back edge of your mat. Feel the sides of your body lengthening right up out of the ground. Make space between your shoulders and your jaw as your hands come to rest just to the sides of your pelvis. Your elbows can poke back into the space behind you. Steadiness, ease. Step your left foot to the outside of your right knee. Wrap your right elbow around your left knee. Lift up through the sides of the body, the sitting bones reaching deep into the ground. Use those coordinates to rotate to your left, bringing your left hand down onto the ground, just behind the pelvis. Make sure that your shoulders fall from your jaw. You're looking right over your left shoulder. Stay here if you'd like. Those of you that are stronger here in the pose or more flexible can rock slightly to the right buttock. Draw that right heel to the left buttock. Make sure that the left sitting bone connects to the ground again. Wrap your right elbow around the left knee. Commit through the length of your spine and use that lengthening to rotate once again. Releasing the pose, or the rotation anyway. If your right leg is in flexion or bent, then rock to the right a little bit, free that underneath leg. Send your left foot closer or back closer to the right buttock so that both of your thigh bones are energized towards each other. Lift up again. Your right foot is in flexion. And as you lengthen through the sides of the body, you can begin to fold forward right over the front raised leg. You know, during the height of the quarantine, it was interesting to take that time of pause to look within. Stay here if you need. Those of you that can move deeper into Gomukhasana, bull seat, you'll bend the bottom knee once again, drawing that right heel to the outside of the left hip. Lift up a little bit so that both of your knees can come up right in line with one another. Flexion in both of your feet. Lengthening up through the sides of the body as you fold over your legs. Let your breath flow through the hip joints. Come upright. Now, leaning back a little bit so that you can free your legs forward, returning to Dandasana. Step your right foot to the outside of your left knee or shin or thigh bone. Your left elbow wraps around your right knee. Feel the sitting bones reach deep into the ground. The spine lengthens upward, using those coordinates to rotate to your right. Your right hand comes down onto the mat, fairly close to your pelvis. Your shoulders fall. Can you breathe? Can you breathe? Stay here if you'd like. Those of you that are strong in this pose can rock slightly to your left buttock. Bend that bottom leg then, so that the left heel comes closer to the right buttock as you resettle that right cheek onto the ground again. And then recommit to your rotation. Releasing the pose or the rotation in order to send that bottom leg long again against the mat. Draw the right foot just to the outside of that left buttock. You might have to lift up a little bit so that the top knee, the right knee, is directed forward. Flexion in both feet as you lengthen up through the sides of the body to fold forward over the top thigh bone. Hello, pigeon. Stay here if you need to. Or rock to the left. Fit that right heel close to the left heel close to the right buttock. Lift up a little bit so that you can maneuver both knees to the same plane. Flexion in both feet. Sitting bones or roots. Spine and sides of the body lengthening upward. Those are your checkpoints. All clear. You can proceed. You know, in the process of yoga, it's important to be able to breathe. In the process of living, it's important to be able to breathe. And the very process of yoga helps to release any and all of the obstructions, the tensions, inner and outer, that would inhibit the movement of breath. Everybody needs to be able to breathe. Come upright, leaning back a little bit, slipping your legs way forward. Come onto your back. You can bring your back down onto the ground. At first, just have your knees related upward and your feet are on the mat. Your head can rest on the ground. Make sure that your shoulders lay flush, or your shoulder blades lay flush against the ground. You can adjust your head and neck so that they're comfortable. Maybe your arms open out to cactus arms, a little bend in your elbows. Lift your pelvis and shift it over to the left edge of your mat with the intention of bringing your legs to the right side of your body so that the left thigh bone lands right on top of the right thigh bone. You can look to your left. Feel how your breath is important here, as it assists in the release of tension and strain. You might even feel encouraged at this point, especially if your left shoulder remains connected to the ground, to draw the left knee a little bit closer to the right knee. Let your breath move. come out of the pose, step your left foot onto the ground first, and then your right foot comes onto the mat. Slide your pelvis over to the right edge of your mat. Keep both shoulder blades on the ground as you carry your legs to the left, with the intention of placing your right thigh bone right on top of your left thigh bone. You can look to your right. To come out of the pose, step your right foot onto the ground first, and then your left foot comes onto the ground next. Slide your pelvis back to the middle. Hug your knees to your chest. It's a nice stretch for the entire length of your spine. Before we take Shavasana, will you rock up to sitting and come into a cross-leg position or auspicious seat or easy seat? And then just for a moment, bring your hands into Jnana Mudra. That's with the tips of your thumbs and index fingers touching each other. You can bring the backs of your hands against your knees or thigh bones. The legs fall deep into the ground. Your spine lengthens out of the ground. Close your eyes. And just in these moments, feel your own vitality feel the movement of your breathing. Come onto your back. Let's take Shavasana, corpse pose. That's where you're lying flat on your back. You can release your legs forward and long, separate from one another. Lift your shoulders from the ground so that you can place your shoulder blades flush on the ground. Your arms can open from your body. Your head rests right on the mat. Let go. Let go. Let go. rub your thumbs over your fingers. Wiggle your toes a little bit. Take in a nice long breath that brings your hands up over your head. Stretch your left side long. Stretch your right side long. Curl over to the right side of your body. Use your right hand to press up to sitting. Returning to a comfortable seated pose of your choice, we'll end our practice. I want to take the time to say thank you for joining us here in Times Square on summer solstice and joining us throughout the 18 years that we've been offering yoga in this space. I want to invite you to continue to practice yoga, and I pray that your practice continues to lead you to steadiness and ease and grace during these trying times. I'd like to thank Times Square Alliance for putting all of this together and helping us to practice in this space. With their support, their dedication, inspiration, and nimbleness, great spirit. Thank you all for coming today. Namaste.
We've been through all of these great waves of change. COVID-19, Black Lives Matter. I've been compelled to draw inward. I've been compelled to sit still. I've been compelled to just feel all of the vibrations and changes, these huge personal changes, social changes, global changes moving through me, and I've just been feeling. Times Square is a great metaphor for all of the noise and distraction that goes on in our own minds. And I think that the way that we can channel that energy, anger, frustration, obstructions, disease, is to really tune inward. Then you hear your own voice, your own inner need, and how you need to respond to these situations on a personal level. And yoga, of course, has the ability to focus one's attention. There have been times in my life where I have felt pushback because of my race, and I felt that my voice was not respected or even belittled. Centuries of, no, you can't do that. No, you will never be that. Why don't you try this instead? Those things locked inside of me. I thought, why don't I just try to prove that differently by my action, by the way I live my life? I didn't want to be a signpost or have it written on my shirt. I thought the best way would be what I wanted to present to the world, just expressing as a black man. The wonderful thing about yoga in Times Square is that when you look out into the square, it's not just white people, it's not just Indian people, it's not just women, it's all kinds of people from all over the place. You see that it's for everybody.